Well, the field is set.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Happens here, like Trump says, I don't know, this J.D. Vance is just not working for me, and I'm gonna go back to the party and make a flip. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about that. Unless that happens, and I don't think it will. The field is set now that Governor Walz is paired up with Kamala Harris, and we've had, weeks of conversation here, just following the bouncing ball. And for those of you who watch regularly, thank you. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time or don't really take notes on how we put the show together, we record the show generally in usually on Thursdays at about 1 o'clock. So you see it on Friday on Fox and on Sunday on the CW and on Channel 12. And we've been in a situation where some Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays are so newsworthy in this ebb and flow that some of our conversations end up being obsolete, and then my political expertise, not mine, but the guests that I bring in here, have to kind of project and guess. And Joe Camarano from PC and I had a real great 3-week run here trying to keep up with this whole situation. Tonight we're going to have Michael Kennedy. He's a professor of sociology and international public affairs at Brown University, another friend of the show, and always gives me something from, I wouldn't say outer space, but something that and he's a lot of fun to speak with. So look, I mean, what's on the plan here. The headline is from the development this week, and on schedule, Kamala Harris makes her pick, and Governor Walz is kind of referred to by some as a walk-on candidate, which is kind of, if you know sports, they're scholarship athletes, and then they're the people that just say, hey, coach, put me in, or I can play for your team, let me prove it, and practice their way onto the team. He was not part of the early group of favorites, but he turned out to be the choice. I mean, you certainly have seen clips like this.
To his former high school students, he was Mr. Walz. To his former high school football players, he was coach. And in 91 days, the nation will know Coach Walz by another name, Vice President of the United States.
And it dawns on me, how are you, my friend? It's great to have you.
Great. It's great to be
You look
back.
great. Great on TV. Dropped a few pounds.
Yeah.
You're my hero. Boy, am I overdue. I know I'm overdue. I know. It dawns on me as I'm watching the clip, oops, as we record on Thursday at 1 o'clock, Donald Trump is scheduled for a 2 o'clock press conference. So I am sure on the radio on Friday, I will have had quite the review with the joyous callers to the program regarding whatever assertion he's going to make, including but not limited to, perhaps, a social post he made today, which is, when Kamala Harris gets 1,000 people at a rally, the media goes nuts over it. When I get 100,000 people at a rally, the media doesn't pay any attention to it. As if she only had 1,000 at the hangar in Detroit Wednesday night while we were, unbelievable. But we'll figure that out as we go. Great to see you. I got some email from Stacy, my producer, that says that you've been creating poetry or some kind. Do you want to start with something new and different?
It's called.
Oh, he's going right to the camera. Oh, look at this. He's a veteran. He's going, excuse me, let me get out of the way. Go right to the camera. No, have fun. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your poem.
This is the only place where I can write poetry and then recite it. So this is actually created for you to imagine how we're going to handle what is entitled 40 Days of Crazy.
Oh, you don't remember your poems? You have to read them off your...
I can't remember. I can't remember a 4-liner. It begins this way. Here we go. Rematch, Trump-Biden. Till that debate, when folks worried Joe's too old. And then worried, is it too late? Trump goes for Vance. a younger version of himself, thinking that a faux hillbilly would assure that MAGA magic in perpetuity. But then, Biden steps aside, allowing Kamala to take the reins, as she is fueled by Vance disdains. Cat ladies assemble. Her first big choice. Whom will Kamala pick? Walz named Trump Vance weird, with echoes, by the way, of 1930s Little Rascals. And that seemed to do the trick. 90 days later, till we vote, either for a felon and a Yaley who moved resentment as they declare they will make America great again, or for a prosecutor and a football coach who can say they can make America better than it's ever been. At least it won't be dark and weird. So that's summarizing the last 40 days.
Well, you know, I don't know that, I mean, you had some, by the way, you had some rhyming in there, but poetry does not demand rhyming.
Right.
So,
just a little playful.
Just in case you guys were thinking it has to all rhyme.
Yeah.
But thank you, because that's your take. I mean, that's a well-prepared, disciplined way to say, this is what I've been thinking about with this roller coaster that I've been talking about here for the last 40 days. It's been crazy, and the polling data is shifting. Can we put this graphic up that we have, Eric? Thank you. This is the Hill's kind of composite, and the Hill had Biden down a good 7 or 8 points, and right now it's got them deadlocked. Deadlock won't win the Electoral College. Right. Hillary Clinton already proved that. She won the popular vote, and she did not win 2016 election. So what's your take on that?
Right, and so this part of the roller coaster hasn't changed, and that is it's still critical to win Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona maybe, Wisconsin,
and
probably.
Thus the Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania,
right,
and Senator Kelly in Arizona, and everybody thinking she's going to pluck some electoral votes with this pick, and she decided not to. She went with a 36,000-foot decision to take Walz and see if he can penetrate the whole shooting match and kind of gum up the MAGA works with his own play. It's an interesting play. And of course, if you do have to govern, you want to be comfortable with somebody.
Right.
And it seems, right, that Walz indicated that he'd be a partner and not a co-pilot, which is reportedly what Shapiro suggested he wanted to be, which may have made her queasy.
I mean, I think a lot of people who know her say that she was looking for someone with whom she could work. And I appreciate that.
With a recognition that she was the boss.
And that she was the boss, right. And, they said that Kelly would be able to play that role. But Kelly also has that kind of astronaut stature, which is a little bit hard to compete with, but it's a little bit easier to treat the football coach as your attack dog partner, especially when he has such a great sense of humor that allows for her laugh to seem calm by comparison.
Did you buy into any of this anti-Semitism criticism with Shapiro not getting the gig?
No. I mean, I'm sure there are anti-Semites playing this game, but he was less experienced than the other candidates. Pennsylvania.
He's also an alpha politician in the sense that he looks like he wants to be the top guy in every situation. And again, some reporting suggests that he was making it kind of clear in the interview process that he felt like he needed to have a demonstrable role in leadership. She didn't with Biden.
That's right.
Why would she expect to change the equation just to buy some electoral votes?
Good for her.
Right, but it's a risk-reward play, though, because Pennsylvania's got to be won.
Yeah.
It seems.
But, he has his own drawbacks even within Pennsylvania. that in some ways Walz doesn't have.
Like
Walz is a regular guy. And taking away the question of religion, rather foregrounding whether this is somebody that you could imagine being in your community. And I'm speaking of white rural guys in particular. He's somebody who can be your bud. And in fact, one of the things that they have highlighted about him is that many of his friends from his own county, from his own army units, will talk about his politics not being theirs, but that they trust him, they like him, and they think he's a good guy. And so one of the things that is clearly in political play, and that's why Walz's description of Trump-Vance as weird really works, because
Trump-Vance, not Trump fans.
Trump-Vance,
right.
The team, they are weird because, not because of their politics, but because of the way in which they're looking at the world, especially the way in which they're looking at people who are different than they are.
Yeah, when we come back, we'll talk about some of the things that Governor Walz has got to defend against. And then later, a theme that seems to be like the hit song in this campaign. Stay with us.
She believes in the opportunity for every single person to join the middle class. She believes in the promise of America. We just got to fight. We just got to fight. Because as soon-to-be President Harris says, when we fight, we win.
So he's going to be in, I mean, look, his appeal, I think, is unquestionable. Governor Dan McKee and I are friendly, and that's no secret to those who follow the TV or the radio show. Well before this happened, he had been talking to Tim Walz with me just in terms of how he runs the Democratic Governors Association. The governor was asked about it, and he said, "Hey, listen, he's on my cell phone." I congratulated him when it was. They have that working relationship. So for Rhode Island, and perhaps for Massachusetts as well, I think we're going to be in a situation where there will be, should they win, there'll be the connectivity to the $400 million problem we have on the bridge and all that kind of stuff. Because it's a big hit. Joe Biden is personally invested in that bridge, according to the governor, and to have him out of the picture, it is so weird to have Joe Biden out of the picture, still running the country, and mumbling about, worrying about if Trump loses. You worried about if Trump loses and
if Trump wins?
No, Trump losing and violence in the country. I'm not concerned about that. I mean, there'll be some pop-up stuff, but
do you remember January 4th, 2021, when I was on, and I said I worry about violence, and I don't remember what you said, but I was worried, and I think I have to be worried, because if you're not cautious and concerned, then you're caught unprepared. That's what martial arts training, would offer.
That makes sense to me, but I think forecasting it and rattling. I mean, there's all sorts of motive for people to vote. One shouldn't be fear of what would happen if you don't elect him. I mean, come on. I mean, that's just that's playing to the bully. I mean, that's right. That's right. That's right. Sense. Two things that Walz is dealing with right now. One, this military career thing, and a manipulation of his chronology, getting out. It seems to be pretty clear that the call up to active duty in combat in the Middle East was 2 months after he had retired for the express purpose of running for Congress after 24 years.
Right.
You see that as a problem for him to defend? I think he's going to get out and kind of explain it, don't you?
Yeah, and I think he's already started. When Vance made kind of a crude attack on this, he said, that's not the way it was, but I also respect your service to our country.
Which is the higher road. This idea of military guys getting after each other about who's better, whose service is better. And by the way, Vance is not a combat guy. He was a PR guy.
Exactly.
So I mean, I don't minimize his service to the country. He was a military person, but come on. The other thing is that this notion of the weapons and assault ban weapons and the weapons of war that he used in his words.
Right.
He's got to clarify that he was never in combat.
That's right.
I mean, he's made some small trip ups already in the middle of this, this exciting week. And the Republicans are going to do everything they can to exploit those things, and should in the competition of the election.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I worry, if I were Trump, I would be worried about how Vance handles these things. If I was
Like
Harris,
chasing down the Air Force Two in the parking lot. What was that all about?
that one I didn't even hear. I'm sorry I missed it. But
But
Harris
on Wednesday,
can't.
he showed up. They were both in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He shows up with his plane, and he goes across the tarmac and drags the press over to Air Force Two to say, "Hey, I want to see the plane that I'm going to be in. And by the way, how come you don't ask this woman any questions?" He literally stalked her. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in a campaign. But
Well, you raised the great question. Will Trump in an hour dump him? And I think that's unlikely as well. But he's become such, what's it called, a lodestone around Trump's neck. And I could never imagine that being the case for any other politician. But Harris, by contrast, for Harris, Walz has only proved to be a major asset, if only by changing the tone of the conversation. It's not going to be who can hit the bottom first. It's going to be keeping it up high, keeping it with good humor, and then seeing if Trump can laugh, and seeing if Vance can laugh in a kind of human way.
Manipulation of, again, the truth, tampons in boys' rooms. Walz signed legislation that simply enabled local districts to decide how they wanted to dispense reproductive products and all the things that girls need. And it was about transgender protection. That is, if somebody is transitioning and they're not yet into the girls' room and in the boys' room, are they able to grab it? It's not as if he was legislating tampons into boys' rooms, but because that's an option that districts could choose, he now is a guy that put tampons in the boys' rooms. I mean, the politics of American races has always been to try to catch a little bit of fact and really dress it up, and but there's a lot of that going on here.
Yeah.
I wonder how effective he will be in explaining all those things. He's going to have to be, because it becomes, perception's
Right.
reality. You just keep putting that on him. Tampons in boys' rooms, tampons in boys' rooms. It's on your chest. If you don't get it off your chest, you're in trouble.
So Walz has experience in this kind of terrain. So I would be surprised if he doesn't handle it well. One of the things I read recently by Tom Edsel, who has a weekly op-ed in the New York Times on Wednesdays, and I mentioned him before, but recently he published this thing, which is, it's not just that we're polarized around race, but that the right is exacerbating the racial division by their attacks. And it's not just the racial division, it's all of these divisions. And so if they wind up attacking Walz for putting such availabilities in boys' rooms, what is that representing? It's not representing a big policy question. It's representing how can we hate them more?
There's a lot of discomfort in America about culture issues. I think he's got to explain it. I don't think he can.
There is discomfort, but there also has to be we have to lower the temperature a little bit. And
I think he's got the ability to do it.
He does.
I think I just explained it. I think he's got to get out and just say, hey, by the way,
right.
I signed legislation that was about something else, the byproduct of which was
Right.
some schools decided to put some tampons in some boys' rooms. I mean, I didn't order the tampons in the boys' rooms. End of story.
Speaking of lowering the temperature and thinking about boys' rooms and girls, my poem references the Little Rascals. And so I just want to encourage you all to look to see where Waltz got this He-Man Woman Haters Club reference. And I'll give you a clue, 1937. And just cue it up, and you'll see Spanky resembling a little bit too much some of our current politicians.
All right, very good. When we come back, what I think is going to be a theme that we might hear in every speech. Stay with us. so far, every major speech, the vice president has said this.
Many of you know, before I was elected vice president and before I was elected a United States senator, I was an elected attorney general and an elected district attorney. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. So in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
So, look, it's interesting. It was in your poem, right? Here's the thing. We only have 90 seconds to talk about this, but I want to get your thought. I asked the radio audience on Wednesday about this, and you couldn't buy a phone line as people were talking about whether they were already burnt out with this little speech. I mean, it's literally like, it's almost like Monty Python, where you're quoting the actual script in the movie. Mm-hmm. And so I have a feeling that she's going to do it every day, and it's going to be wear and tear until it breaks through the eye of the needle and ends up becoming kind of the cult-like content of her presentation, where people start to quote it, and she can actually, like a concert where Springsteen might, half the song, actually just put the microphone into the crowd and they sing the lyrics. What do you think about the message?
Well, the message is true. You know, you have a prosecutor against a convicted felon. There is a potential burnout factor, but one of the things that's happening is that social media is turning these things, which can be boring and repetitive, into something that makes people smile. Oh, we know where she's going. This is a meme, and we're going to mobilize our people to support her in this.
Yeah, I think. See, your modern take on that kind of stuff is important, because I do think it's going to be annoying for a while, and at the end, it's going to be the thing that everybody remembers and everybody can quote from soup to nuts. Good to see you. Can you come back before the election, please? Promise?
My pleasure.
Start working on your next poem. Final word, and we'll come back to this.
That went.
A former program next week, and we'll get right back into it during the Democratic Convention the following week. Summer's waning. Try to enjoy the most of it in the midst of this 40 days. I can't wait for the next poem. You guys have a great weekend. Thanks.